So to me, one of the most awkward situations you can be in is when you're with somebody else and that person asks another person a question that they shouldn't have asked, right? Just completely awkward. Maybe it was a socially inappropriate question. Maybe it's a little bit on the insensitive side to where you're like, that wasn't me. Like, don't look at me. They're the person asking that. And you're thinking to yourself, did you really just ask that question? Because instinctively, everybody should know you're not supposed to ask that. Now, it could be completely innocent. The question could have great intentions, but you thought everyone knows, don't ask that question. For instance, let's look at categories. How about men and women? Questions that you should never ask men and women. To a woman, you should never ask, are you tired? Never ask that question, because what she hears you saying is, you look terrible. Right, ladies? That's what you hear, right? Okay, or how about this? Never ask a woman, is that really what you're gonna wear? Because what she actually hears you saying is, you think I'm ugly, don't you? That's what she hears you saying. Or to a woman, never, ever, ever ask, you know what I'm gonna say right now, don't you? Are you pregnant? Never ask that, ever. Because what she actually hears you saying is, wait, I really don't need to explain this one, do I? I don't, because if I do, we're in trouble. All right, how about men? To a man, you should never ask, do you really know where you're going? Never ask that. Yes, he does. What he actually hears you saying is, you're not a man. That's what he hears. Or to a man, should you ever ask, never do this, just never do this. Do you really think you can open that? Yes, he does. What he actually hears you saying is, you're not a man. And to a man, never ask, do you really want to eat all of that? Yes, he does. And what he actually hears you saying is, you're not a man. Unless you can eat all of this. And at that point, challenge accepted. Let's go, all right? All kinds of questions, and it's not just for men and women. There's questions for every different scenario and situation that anybody with an ounce of EQ, anybody with an ounce of social intelligence should know, yeah, you shouldn't ask that. Now, you would think that Jesus wouldn't be that guy, right? That he wouldn't be the guy that would ask a question that everybody else knows, yeah, you really shouldn't go there. Well, there's a question that at first glance, Jesus asked a particular individual. And at first glance, you might think, wow, that's insensitive, Jesus. Or at best, that's a little socially tone deaf. That would be maybe your first assumption. It's easy to think that. But if you dig a little bit deeper, he might be asking the most crucial question you will ever be asked. The story's in John 5. Here it is. After this, there was a feast of the Jews. And Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now, there is in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool, in Aramaic called Bethesda, which has 5 colonnades. In these lay multitudes of invalids, blind, lame, and paralyzed. So here's the context. The sheep gate was a gate in the city walls, and it was one of the major entry points into Jerusalem. And by this particular gate, there was a pool. And this pool had very special significance for the people of Jerusalem in Jesus' day. From time to time, what would happen would be this pool would just start to bubble up. The water would just start bubbling up. And the cultural myth in that day the belief was that whenever the water was bubbling up, it was actually angels that were stirring up the water. And the cultural legend was that if you saw the water bubbling up and you were the first person to get into the water, then you would be healed from whatever kind of sickness or disability that you have. So there would have been hundreds of people lying around this pool just waiting for the water to bubble up so that they could get in and be healed. And they built these colonnades around it. Think massive covered porches to provide shade, because we're talking about the Middle East here. The sun's pretty intense. So the people at the pool, they need relief from the sun. That's what's going on here. You've got hundreds of men and women lying around in the shade around this pool, all kinds of sicknesses that they can't get rid of, all kinds of diseases and disabilities that have hindered them and held them back. They're just lying in the shade next to this pool, waiting for it to bubble up, hoping that it will, so that they can get in the water and they can finally be healed. That's what's going on. One man was there who had been an invalid for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there, he knew that he'd already been there a long time. And he said to him, "Do you want to be healed?" The sick man answered him, "Sir, I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up. And while I am going down, another steps down before me." This seems like a pretty insensitive question, right? Or at least somebody that's got a little bit of social intelligence would know, hey, don't ask that. The guy's been laying there for 38 years. Held completely captive by whatever disease or disability that he has. He's been there for almost 4 decades. Of course he wants to be healed. That couldn't be more obvious. Jesus, why are you asking this question? You just trying to air out this dude's issues publicly to embarrass him? Of course he wants to be healed. Why would you ask that question? Because maybe, just maybe, he might not want it to be healed. Maybe he didn't want to be healed. And that might sound even more insensitive than the question. But there's a reason Jesus is asking a question about something that seems obvious. It seems obvious, but it's not. In the Middle East, and even in parts of the world today, someone like this man, if he's healed from this disease, he could actually lose a pretty good living. What people would give him on a daily basis. I mean, he was able to turn that into a living that wasn't bad. As crazy as it sounds, some of the people at this pool, some of them, their situation might have been preferable. I mean, this guy that Jesus is talking to, he's lying there in the shade next to the pool. We wouldn't see it this way, but this living, he's made this into a living that's lasted 38 years, and it's worked. He's lying in the shade next to a pool. He can look out and see people working out in the sun. He sees people doing business in the streets, the busyness, the hustle and the bustle of all of it, while he gets to lie in the shade next to the pool. Now, that doesn't downplay his sickness at all. This is serious. Somebody that can't walk for 38 years, that's nothing to make light of at all. But if he's healed, he basically goes from having no responsibility at all to having responsibility he hasn't had for 38 years. Like if he's healed, everything right now is given to him by other people on a daily basis. If he's healed, now he has the ability to act on his own, and there's an expectation that he will. So Jesus' question, it's not crazy, and it's not insensitive. What he's really getting at is, hey, do you want what's going to come with being healed? Do you want that? This guy, all he can do is sit around and do nothing. He needs to be healed. But if he's healed, he can't sit around anymore. He's got to act. Do you want to be healed? 38 years has become a way of life for him. If something becomes a way of life for you, like where you learn how to live with it, or you adapt to whatever it is that has become a way of life to you, even though that might be hindering you and holding you back, it's a way of life now. Do you want that to be changed? So another way to ask this question that Jesus is saying is, really what he's asking is, do you want to be changed? Healing would change this guy's life, change his life. You may not need physical healing, but this question is still very much on the table for you today. Do you want to be changed? Sometimes we answer no to that question. Like, why would we answer no to this? I mean, shouldn't we say, if Jesus asks you, do you want to be changed, should we jump up and say, yes, please? But for some reason, sometimes we say no. And we think this is a good thing, right? What Jesus is asking, it's a good thing. I don't think any of us think that what Jesus is trying to do right here is manipulate us. We don't think he's trying to pull a fast one on us or take advantage of us. We would all agree that this question he's asking, it's a good thing. So why do we hesitate on it? Here's the thing. There are very few things that will disrupt the work that Jesus wants to do in your life, like how you respond to this question. If Jesus doesn't want something from you, but he wants something for you, then why would we ever hesitate on this? Why is there hesitation? Or even us saying no? Now, I think there's three different things that cause us to hesitate or even say no to this. Maybe one of these three just nails you right now. It describes you to a T. Maybe it does. Or maybe you can relate to all three. I think the first reason why we hesitate is we start thinking about, hey, what am I going to lose? Because the assumption we make is that people don't like change, right? That's the assumption that people don't like change. We just kind of all think that that's true. The problem is that's not true at all. What people are afraid of is the loss that can come with change. People don't have a problem with change. It's what they might lose with change, because there is a level of loss that comes with any kind of change in your life, in your business, in the church, whatever. There's always a level of loss that comes with change. Maybe you lose something completely insignificant. Maybe you lose something that's so small and really honestly it's just meaningless that you don't even notice. Maybe change means you lose something that needs to be lost. Or maybe you lose something that has a lot of value to you, that means a lot. Maybe it's even a good thing. There's always a level of loss that comes with any kind of change. That's why you have to know if it's the right change. This guy that Jesus is talking to, he's going to lose a way of life. He gets to lie by a pool in the shade and have stuff given to him. He's going to lose that. But what he's going to gain is he's going to gain responsibility, which responsibility is actually a privilege. He's going to gain purpose back. He's going to gain a life where now he gets to act instead of being stagnant. What he's going to lose what's holding him back. That's his sickness. It's holding him back. 38 years holding him captive. So if you say yes to this question, Jesus is asking you, do you want to be changed? If you say yes, what are you going to lose? What are you going to lose? What do you need to lose? Now hear me on this. This is truth. If you say yes to this question that Jesus is asking, what you lose will never be greater than what you gain. It will never be greater than what you gain. So maybe you need to lose a certain lifestyle. That's the loss that comes with it. Or maybe you lose a relationship that's it's flat out, let's just be honest, it's flat out toxic. You know that it's not good for you. Or maybe you lose a relationship that you thought is great. This seems awesome. And then you're surprised that you lose it once Jesus starts changing you. When change comes, there's loss. That's why people are hesitant to change. But I want you to know this about change. A really good friend of mine said this years ago. He said this: healthy things live, living things grow, and growing things change. Healthy things live, living things grow, and growing things change. And that's true, right? That's true in every area of life. I mean, even down to a scientific level. I mean, look at an oak tree. Starts off as this little bitty acorn. And bury it in the ground, and eventually it starts to sprout, and a shoot starts to grow, and that acorn, as it continues to change, the shell of the acorn just basically disintegrates and disappears, and the shoot starts to grow. And then eventually it needs to grow a trunk and some bark for protection. Because if it doesn't change at all, if it just stays as a shoot, it's gonna die, right? It's either not gonna get enough nutrients, or it's gonna get stepped on and smashed, or something's gonna eat it. Like if you're not changing, it means you're not growing. And if you're not growing, it's because you're not living. And if you're not living, it's because you're not healthy. But as this acorn turns into a shoot and it grows and it continues to grow, it develops bark and a trunk, and then the roots continue to grow and they go deeper and wider and get stronger to give the tree more stability. And it continues to grow and it continues to change, and more branches are developed and grow out of it, so there's more leaves for photosynthesis. And it continues to grow and change, and it grows taller and taller and taller until one day, years later, you've got this massive oak tree. It's changed dramatically. In fact, it's not even an acorn anymore. Now it's what it was always meant to be, an oak tree. And you're meant to be the same thing. But acorns don't turn into oaks overnight. It's a process. There's change and growth and change and growth. But you can't have growth without change, and you can't have change without growth. This question, do you want to be changed? This is talking about changing you into what God's meant you to be all along. And whatever you think you're going to lose by letting Jesus change you, what he changes and grows you into will be far greater and far better than anything you lose. Which brings to the second hesitancy, which is growing pains. I mean, this guy hasn't walked for 38 years. If he starts walking today, how do you think his quads are going to feel tomorrow? They're going to burn, right? They're going to hurt. And so will every other leg muscle that he's got, because now they're doing what they were always meant to do. The good news is each day they're going to grow a little bit stronger and the pain's going to grow a little bit weaker. This question that Jesus is asking, do you want to be changed? It's really a never-ending question to you. Jesus will always be changing you, always be growing you into what he has for you, into what he meant you to be, always be doing that. And oftentimes, he will grow you in seasons of pain. If I look back on the seasons of the most pain in my adult life, right on the heels of those seasons were my greatest seasons of growth. I don't want to go through them again at all, not at all. But 2007 to 2010, those 3 years, painful for me. 2017, terrible year for me. You can ask my wife, she's in here right now. The last 2 years have been painful for all of us, have they not? Like in those different years, I experienced job loss, betrayal, failure. People I thought that were my friends end up abandoning me. Personal attacks, having to let go of something that I loved, the death of a family member, the fallout of other people's shady decisions and actions, the uncertainty of what was going to happen to me tomorrow, which meant the uncertainty of what was going to happen to my family in the future. And that doesn't even include the last 2 years. Those seasons were terrible. Terrible for me. Incredibly painful. But my greatest years of growth as a disciple of Jesus came right on the heels of those seasons. I don't want to go through them again at all. But I wouldn't trade them for anything. They were growing pains. So here's what I've learned. People are most hesitant to say yes to change because of the growing pains that might come with them. But hear me on this. Lean into that stuff. Don't run away from it. Because the painful seasons in life will be the seasons that Jesus grows you the most if you let him. If you let him. And then the last thing that makes us hesitant is the unknown. If there's any hesitation to being changed, it's because we don't know what unknown things we're going to face. I mean, this guy, 38 years laying by this pool, that had become a way of life for him. He would have never picked this. Nobody would choose, hey, yeah, I don't want to walk for 38 years. I'm going to take that way of life. Nobody's going to choose that. You wouldn't, I wouldn't, this guy wouldn't choose that. Nobody wants that. But this had become a way of life to him that he'd gotten used to. He got used to it. Man, is there something that has become a way of life for you? You wouldn't pick it for yourself. You don't want it. You wouldn't pick it for anybody else. It's become a way of life, though, and you've gotten used to it. This guy, 30 years, this way of life that he'd gotten used to, that's what was holding him back. Is there a way of life that you've gotten used to that's holding you back? And don't just think about physical disability or sickness, just because that's what's in this story. There are far more things that can hold you back. And maybe for you, maybe it's anger. Has anger become a way of life for you? Now, anger is a normal emotion. It absolutely is. But what can happen is anger can grab a hold of you and take over if you let it. And what will happen with unresolved anger, it'll eventually turn into bitterness. Like somebody who's bitter, a bitter person is usually somebody, they've got unresolved anger. Something happened to you at some point. Maybe you were justifiably angry. Absolutely, you should be angry about this thing that happened. But you held on to the anger. Now the anger is holding on to you. It's become a way of life. And if anger is a way of life for you, it's going to hold you back. It's going to hold you back from God's peace and his joy. It's going to hold you back from making an impact on people. Because if anger is a way of life for you, people are going to keep you at an arm's distance at best, or they're going to end their relationship with you. Just won't be around you. And you're called to impact people. God has a specific purpose for you, how to impact people. But if anger is a way of life for you, it's just going to hold you back. So, do you want to be changed? Maybe it's addiction. Has addiction become a way of life for you? Drugs or alcohol? Pornography? Which I think that's the biggest addiction in our culture that nobody talks about. Is it food? Could be social media or Netflix. If there's an addiction, whether it starts off as something bad, like drugs and pornography, or if it's something that's good in and of itself, like Netflix, if it has become an addiction, it's got a hold on you, and it's gonna turn you into a slave, and it will dismantle your life one day at a time. Whether it's good or bad, and if it's easily bad, like we would all just say, oh, that's not good, or maybe it's something that you just want to justify. If there's something in your head that you're like, well, actually, let me explain that. That's a red flag. Let that be a red flag to you. But if there's something that's become a way of life, an addiction that's holding on to you, it's going to hold you back, and it's not going to allow you to be who God's meant you to be. So, do you want to be changed? Maybe something happened to you. Something awful. Somebody did something to you that was just flat out evil. Maybe it happened years ago. But it's just taken hold of your mind. And you relive it often. You think about it. You're triggered by it easily. And you don't want that. You didn't want that to happen to you. What happened to you was horrific. You don't want that thing to have a hold on your mind, but it does. And it's holding you back. And you're thinking, well, it can't be healed. There's too much damage, too much pain, too big of a wound. It can't be healed. That's impossible. Well, there was a guy that couldn't walk for 38 years, and Jesus took care of that. He can heal you too. Do you want to be changed? What about resentment? Resentment can become a way of life really easily. Resentment comes from disappointment. So either something happened or somebody did something that you don't appreciate at best, or it comes from unmet expectations. And like anger, the disappointment at first might be justifiable, but what resentment will do is it will take over you and it will change you, it will harden your heart and make you give birth to a new level of selfishness. Because what resentment will do is it will tell you your focus should be you. What happened to you, what you should be having, what you didn't get, what you deserve, where you should be now. Resentment will make you cold to people. It will take callousness and selfishness and make it a way of life for you. That's only going to hold you back from God's goodness. That's only going to hold you back and take you out of the game for what God has for you, the purpose God has for you. Because the purpose that God has for you is not about you. It's not. It's about Him and it's about them. Them is everybody else. If resentment is a way of life, it's going to hold you back. So, do you want to be changed? Like whatever it is for you, that thing that's popping in your head right now, do you want to be changed? And this question from Jesus is always, always, always an invitation to something better, to something more, to something meaningful. Even if it's harder. I mean, everything is harder than laying in the shade next to the pool, is it not? Like some of you right now might be saying, Matt, I want to lay in the shade next to the pool. It's cold outside. Everything is harder than laying in the shade next to the pool. It's much easier to hold on to anger than to seek peace. It's much easier to hold on to resentment than seek forgiveness. It just is. It's much easier to hold on to pain from a past wound because that's much easier than going through the pain that you're going to have to go through to be healed. It's easier to hold on to addiction and surrender to that because it feels good in the moment than go through the withdrawal that you have to go through to get to freedom. Everything is harder than a way of life that you've gotten used to. And if you're honest with yourself right now, that way of life that you've gotten used to, whatever that is, if you're honest with yourself, you don't want it. You don't want it. You know it. And you know it's holding you back. But here's what's really cool. This question that's being asked, do you want to be changed? It's being asked at Bethesda. And that name means something. Bet means house, and Heza means God's loving kindness. So this question that Jesus is asking you, do you want to be changed? He's asking that at the house of God's loving kindness. That means something. This is just another example of God's loving kindness to you. Do you want to be changed? Here's how the story ends. Do you want to be healed? Do you want to be changed? The sick man answered him, Sir, I have no one to put me in the pool when the water is stirred up. And while I'm going down, another steps down before me. Jesus said to him, Get up. Let's go. Get up. Take your bed and walk. And at once, the man was healed. And he took up his bed and he walked. The guy just got up when Jesus told him what his next step was, and he did it. Do you want to be changed? Whatever that is for you, only you know what that is. However you need to be changed. Whatever way of life that you've gotten used to, whatever is holding you back, just stand up, follow Jesus in faith, do what he's telling you to do, and obey. Follow him. And maybe for you, that next step is baptism. All right, man, Jesus, I'm ready. I'm ready to go all in. You are my Lord and Savior. I'm putting my faith and trust in you. Let's go. I'm ready to get baptized. Awesome, let's do that. Maybe we're going to do that next weekend. If you want to do it today, I don't care. Let's do it today. Let's not wait. Or maybe your next step is to let go of a sin that you're holding on to. Again, only you know what that is. Or maybe your next step is to ask for forgiveness. That takes humility. That means you got to let go of your pride, you got to let go of your ego, and go to someone and ask for forgiveness. I can't tell you how much healing that will bring to you, and also how much freedom that will bring to that person. Or maybe you need to forgive somebody else. And maybe you're thinking, man, this person, they don't deserve to be healed. I get it. Here's the thing. You and I, we didn't deserve forgiveness either from Jesus, but he did it anyway. Not forgiving someone is like you drinking poison and hoping the other person dies. Like maybe your next step is you need to forgive someone. Maybe you don't even know what it is. I don't know what my next step is. Cool, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. Let's pray over that. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna have one more song of worship where we just get to respond to God and worship. And as soon as I get done praying, actually when I'm praying, we've got some leaders in the room right now, leaders of our church. They're gonna make their way over to the side, that wall over there. And during that song, if you want to talk to someone, make your way over there. If you want to talk about whatever, there's nothing off the table. You can talk about anything you want. If you have questions about something, if you just want someone to pray for you, if you want someone to help you, hey, figure out what that next step is. As soon as we start singing, man, just get up and go over there. Let's do it. Don't wait. My role here today, and actually this is my role every single Sunday, I'm just here to relay the question that Jesus is asking to you. He's asking you right now, do you want to be changed? So how do you want to answer that? Father, thank you for being a God that changes. That you grow us and you change us and you make us into something more. You make us into who you designed us to be all along. But God, will you just give us courage because it's scary. What am I going to lose? What kind of pain am I going to go through? What's the unknown? Will you just give us courage and faith to follow you? Everybody in here right now, there's something. Everybody joining us online, there's something. And God, you know exactly what that is for each individual person, something that has become a way of life, something that they're holding on to, they've gotten used to, or something that's holding them back. Only you know what that is. Maybe they don't even know. But Father, I pray right now that if anything came out of my mouth that's from me, that it will be forgotten. But your words, if anything has been said from you, they will sink deep right now. Give us the courage and faith to follow you, to stand up, to pick up our beds and walk. Change us and grow us. Change us and grow us. Change us and grow us again. We're open-handed. We trust you. It's in Jesus' name. Amen.